Can I have your attention, please? We're getting ready to start the meeting, so if you can take a seat and we'll get organized and start here shortly. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and call to order the Sacramento Regional Transit Board meeting for Monday, November 13th, 2017. Clerk, please call the roll.
Director Budge? Here. Director Hansen?
Present.
Director Harris?
Here.
Director Hume?
Here.
Director Jennings is on his way. Director Kennedy?
Here.
Director Miller?
Present.
Director Natoli? Director Chenier?
Here.
Director Cerna is on his way, and Chair Morin.
Here.
With that, we have a quorum at 100 votes. This meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel, and will be streamed live on RT's website. Tonight's meeting will air on November 15th at 6 p.m. and replayed on November 16th at 9 a.m. and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. This is also closed captioned. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker card located at the rear of the room and provide it to me or Adam. Please speak into the microphone and state your name for the record. We would appreciate everyone turning off their cell phones. Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks, Cindy. Would everyone please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so before we get started here, to accommodate some board member schedules, I'm going to propose, with the concurrence of the board here, that we move items 12 and 13 to the front of the agenda and then quickly get to public addresses, the board on matters not on the agenda. So that would again be moving items, so we'll go straight to item 12 and then item 13 and then get back to the beginning of the board agenda at the request of some board members. So with that, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adjust the schedule accordingly. Second. So is everybody okay with that? All in favor?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Director Hansen?
If we're doing that, why don't we just knock out the consent calendar too real quick if we don't have a lot of
You're right. Good point. So with that, we have no request to speak on any of the consent calendar items. So why don't we go
Move
ahead?
approval.
That's not consent. So yeah. So we're good. We got you, Jeffrey, on that one.
All right.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Okay. Moved by Director Budge, seconded by Director Kennedy. Please, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Motion carries with 100 votes, noting that the consent calendar was items 1 through 8.
All right, and so thank you for that suggestion, Steve. So with that,
You're welcome, Andy.
we do have a motion and a second to move items 12 and 13 to the right in front of public addresses matters not on the agenda. So all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to that? Okay.
Mr. Chair, can
Yes.
I request that
Yes.
we also move item 10 to the front of the agenda?
Item 10 as well.
10 is the 65th Street property, is that correct? 11?
We have speakers on item number 10.
And we do have speakers on 12 and 13 as well, but not a large number of speakers.
Okay,
So.
well then, I'll withdraw that.
Okay.
We can do it in the proper order.
Okay, so very good. So with that, Madam Clerk, item 12.
Item number 12, declaring Ardenway property excess to transit operations as surplus. Before you are 3 resolutions. The first one, declaring property at 880-924-936 Ardenway surplus property excess to transit operation, and adoption of item B or C. Item B is reaffirming authority to the general manager CEO to negotiate and execute a purchase and sale agreement with Community Housing Works for the Ardenway property, or adopting item C, resolution rescinding authority of the general manager CEO and return with a purchase and sale agreement for the board to approve.
All right, well.
Brent Berniker is
All
here.
right. Well, thank you. And I was just going to say, Brent quickly got himself organized and set up here. So
All right.
thanks, Brent.
A little confusion, but I got it. Thanks. Thank you, Andy. Good evening, members of the board and the public. So this item is to discuss the 3 parcels at Arden Way that we're looking to surplus and sell. So the Arden Way parcel, Sharon, if you could open. Get it in the slide.
Okay.
Okay, great. So the acreage that we're looking at right now is about 2.8 acres. It's 3 parcels. If you could, yeah. And this is an overview of the location that we're looking at. The parcels that we're going to discuss tonight is parcel number 2, 3, and 4. Parcel number 1 is what we refer to as the evergreen location. That, as you saw on the board calendar, is being pushed out to another board meeting. And parcel number 5 is actually the area where our tracks are located, so we won't be discussing that. The next slide. So what we did is, actually, I wanted to go through the timeline of events before we start going through the offers and give you guys full transparency on what we've been doing with these properties. You'll see back in 2014, we came to the board in November of 2014 with a direction to begin selling these properties. At that point in time, we also hired Turton Commercial to come on site and assist us with the brokering the properties, marketing the properties, and finding viable buyers for these properties. And then after we hired Turton, we actually formed an internal committee at SAC-RT where we refer to it as the real estate committee. And what we do is when Turton brings those offers, the real estate committee reviews those offers, vets those offers. And at that point in time, once the committee is comfortable, we run it by the GM and then we bring it to the board for approval. So this particular offer we received was brought forward on April of 2017. We brought forward the offer, the price and terms to the board for approval, and delegation of authority for the general manager to enter into a contract with this buyer. There were some conditions on that, though, at the time that it must meet a 5% of the appraisal value. If it wasn't 5% below the appraisal value, it should be at least higher than that. So in May of 2017, we obtained the appraisal. The appraisal that we received on this property came in higher. So what we needed to do is we had to go back to that buyer and seek a higher price. What we did is after seeking that higher price, the buyer also initially, he proposed an offer to buy 4 parcels, and then he narrowed it down to 3. So he dropped that 4th parcel, which we refer to as Evergreen. So when he dropped that 4th parcel and lowered the price, then it came within that 5% threshold. So we brought that back to the board in August and asked for board approval on that. And then recently, last month, we sought board approval to declare this property as surplus. And now we're at a position where we're going to go through those offers to give full disclosure. So the first thing that we did when we hired Turton is Turton went out and created marketing brochures. This is an example of the marketing brochure that was sent out at Royal Oaks. You'll see some pictures, a narrative, and then basically an overview of that property. Basically, once Turton started marketing this, he reached out to about 65 buyers and realtors. At that point in time, it was like I said, it was marketed as 4 parcels, and then after we received some offers, it was narrowed down to 3. And then the buyers at that time were also informed of some of the challenges with the light rail being close nearby. Of those 4 offers, Turton went through and screened those offers. Each of them had different plans. 2 of the offers were multifamily. One offer was undefined. They gave us just a general background. And then the last offer was to do affordable multifamily housing. So I'd like to go over the first offer first. So the first offer was MGD Capital Partners. The offer was for $800,000 for all 4 parcels. There was no revised offer. However, during the screening process, this offer was rejected because it was determined that they did not have sufficient proof of funds at that point in time. So then we went on to the next offer, which is offer number 2. With this offer, the company was New Phase Holdings. They were looking for a multifamily planned use. The offer was originally at $500,000 for 4 parcels, and then subsequently this was reduced to $300,000 for 3 parcels. But at that same point in time, we also had Turton look at this from a funding perspective and determined that they did not have adequate funding or proof of funding at that point in time. The next offer we looked at was an offer for an undefined retail center. That offer was really high at $1.4 million for all 4 parcels. But after learning that we were only going to sell those first 3, there was no revised offer. And we also looked at it from a proof of funds, and there was no proof of funds, and we determined that there was no defined concept on this offer. And that's really important when we're looking at these offers, that we look at what's being offered, because we're really trying to increase transit supportive properties. So we're looking for someone that's going to do affordable housing, transit supportive, something in that nature. And that's where offer number 4 came in. This is with Community Housing Works. This company is a California nonprofit that's building affordable housing and helping people in the community. Their plan was to build a multifamily affordable housing and retail. The final offer that came in for those 3 parcels came in at $1,113,400, which is 5% of below the appraised value, but that was still a reasonable value at that point in time, and we still think that is today, and that was within the GM's authority. So with that being said, we had these 3 options that are available, and at this point in time, we're looking to seek authority from the board on these 3 options. First, to declare this property as surplus, and then the second request is to seek reaffirmation of the GM's CEO delegation of authority to enter into a contract with this. The third option is we can actually rescind the GM authority and still work with this buyer and just bring back a final purchase sale to the board for approval. But at this point in time, we see this as a lot of these properties that we're dealing with, you're dealing with buyers that want to make decisions quickly. They want to move along fast. They have options in their mind on what they want to do with this property. They have certain timelines that they meet. So it's important for us, if we can seek the board's approval in advance, that helps us move these along quicker. So staff recommends first declaring this surplus and then getting an affirmation of a GM authority to enter into an agreement with CHW.
Very good. Thank you, Brett. And I do believe this is a lot of what the board was looking for at the last meeting, as far as just detailing the process and really, bringing all of this out into the open here. So with that, any questions of Brent? I do have 3 requests to speak on this item. So before I get to these speakers, so Director Budge.
Yeah.
Yes.
So a significant amount of time was spent last meeting talking about the process.
Yes.
Talking about what happens when you declare a piece of property surplus and the fact that it has to be offered at fair market value to another government agency.
Yes.
And you've reaffirmed that in your staff report on item 10 at 65th Street or whatever that is. So if this property is declared surplus, then why doesn't it have to be offered to another government agency?
It still will. What we're seeking right now is GM authority to enter into this agreement. If after it's declared surplus, another agency does come along and purchases it for that purpose, we would have to back out. We would wait for those 60 days to pass before we would actually enter into the agreement with that buyer. But what we're trying to do is seek authority in advance so that when that 60 days passes, if there are no other buyers, state agencies that want that property, that would allow us to continue.
Okay, so that really does apply to everything that's declared surplus.
Yes.
It just didn't get into the report. So,
Okay.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
so you
Yep.
really can't just sell it to CHW until there's
60
an
days
interim
has
step.
passed. Yeah. I'm pretty sure we had discussed that at the last board. And maybe I could clarify that, but I think we were trying to.
I think you just did.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay.
So thank you, Linda. So anything else, Linda? Okay, Director Harris?
Thank you, Chair Moran. We delegated authority to Henry Lee in April on this and solicited bids from developers and entered into negotiations with CH Works months ago. This is really not a fast-track process. They've invested a fair amount of money into the process. Even by taking these actions, we could jeopardize that sale. And to me, that would be a big loss because this is a transit supportive use. Transit supportive uses are actually hard to find. People who are willing to build affordable housing are hard to find. This is a great opportunity for RT to capture a fair amount of money for the parcels and also reach their stated use of transit-supported housing. So I would like to move A and B and reject C.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other questions, comments from directors before I bring up requests to speak on this item? Okay, so with that, we have Elaine Jackson, and after Elaine is Jeremy Turner, and after Jeremy is David Plagg. Good evening, Elaine.
Good evening. Hi, I live in the community right next to this area, and my concern with what the board and RT will be doing has to do with improvements with RT in our neighborhood. We have not had improvements in our district. We see that District 3 has had a beautiful, beautiful light rail station put there with hardly no one there to ride on it. I'm upset, and I want to know why they're selling this property when there's a problem at Arden and Del Paso with regards to backups continually at major traffic times. Why isn't RT looking at putting in a new transfer station there? I don't understand that. Why would you give a piece of property away that could have a really nice transfer station? And I'm upset because we're getting no improvements in District 2. I want to know where our tax dollars are going for District 2. We have not gotten them. I feel that some people have conflicts of interest in regards to what they're doing because they have future plans that they don't tell people, and some of them sit on this board. And so my neighbors are very upset, a lot of them, because they do know that. And I want to know why the board isn't looking at improving anything in our district. We have no one here to speak up for us in our district, not one person. So it is very upsetting when we see this. And I have been waiting and waiting for improvements to our district. I don't see anything, and RT is one of them. You're just one of the pieces there not doing anything. So why is the transfer station sitting there backing up traffic, which costs RT money, by the way? Every time those buses have to sit there and wait until traffic moves through there, and sometimes there's hundreds of cars in that area. I mean, there is no area really for transfer there to begin with. It's very dangerous. I don't know how many of you have driven there, but if you drive there at traffic times, you'll see how bad it is. That is one of the worst locations I have seen, and for 3,000 person a day, why aren't you using this property for a new transit station? I mean, I would imagine that that's the reason you guys own it to begin with. I mean, I wouldn't know why else you'd own it. I mean, I want something done for my neighborhood. I'm sure all the neighbors there would like it. And that's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you, Elaine. So Jeremy Turner, is Jeremy here? And after Jeremy is David Plike. Good evening, Jeremy.
Hey guys, and Linda, nice to see you again. Last time I was here, we put in an offer to purchase the property. It was not itemized and parceled out at that time. You've had ample time to come to us and let us onto the property to actually see it. We have not been able to see it. We would like to see it. We've been in the community for over 50 years in business. We're right across the street from this property, 35 years, going on 36. We took on the old Croy radio station building. So we see firsthand what's happening here. We have such a vested interest in building this community. Come to us. I've worked in San Diego. I've worked in Los Angeles. I'm a teacher. I teach multifamily energy auditing. I've gone through CHW buildings. We should not be entering this quickly. And I agree, but some of our evidence is saying that we needed to. Which one is it? Expedience, or should we slow down a little bit for the process? I suggest we slow down a little bit. A couple things here. This building has been held, or excuse me, the parcels have been held on for about 10 years now for zoning reasons. It was a lumberjack. Why can't it be a lumberjack again? Why can't it be something else? I saw itemized here 2 multifamily purposes, 1 undefined, and then we had some mixed use that we were looking at. And then we saw an $800,000 bid, but no proof of funds. It seemed that no proof of funds was a theme through the qualified buyers, but yet across the street from you, you have a qualified buyer that has been wanting to develop there for years. Zoning issues. We're still here. We're not going away. 1.113 million for 3 Arden parcels to CHW. Itemized for everyone to see here. But the last agenda, it wasn't there. I'm glad for the clarity. We want more. Transit supportive use, prove it to me. Please, because I will bring to you robust transit movement with supportive use. If you give us the opportunity, I will work for you for free. Happy to, because I'm a Sacramento resident, long-time RT user, Sac High graduate, Sac State graduate. All throughout the state of California, I've taught. I've seen it. Please give me the extra time because I'm not allowed at the city council. I believe in you, council members.
Well, out of consideration for everybody
Thank you.
speaking. So
Again,
3 minutes.
one other thing, please. Affordable housing, I want proof. I want the numbers to be prevalent to the community, what this actually is going to be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Okay, David Plagg. David? Evening, David.
How are you? David Plagg with the Del Paso Boulevard Partnership. First, let me just thank Henry for sitting down with him and really separating out these two properties that the board can then vote on this particular issue. Obviously the transparency that happened before, that's been cleared up. I've looked at the staff report. I think you guys did a good job with that. The actual use of this particular property, and not to get too far into the weeds, is really not your role. It's really the city council's role at that point. So if you guys feel good about this, then as the partnership, we're going to support this move. Obviously with the fact that it'll go back to the council and we can look at it and see what kind of percentage of housing and retail and that. So one, I just want to thank Henry for his effort, and as well as some of the other council members that I spoke to.
Great. All right. Thanks for coming out, David. Okay, so that concludes requests to speak on this item. So director comments. Director Hanson?
Chairman, if I could just real quick make a clarification in response to Director Budge's question. CH Works, as an affordable housing builder, is a qualifying purchaser under the surplus statute. So I don't know if that was clearly conveyed before, but that's the case. In other words, they are entitled to be a priority purchaser because of the use they're planning on putting the property to.
Okay. And a priority over, say, another government agency?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily, but
Director.
they're not. They shouldn't be viewed as like a private developer.
Right.
They're a qualifying purchaser under the surplus land statute.
All right. Thanks for that, Tim. So, Director Hanson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know I was flying back from a wedding when we had our last board meeting, so I didn't get a chance to talk about this. I think this is a learning opportunity for our staff, because I don't think that when this was originally agendized, even though the board believed we were delegating authority to enter into purchase and sale agreements to the general manager to help RT get rid of properties that we hadn't actually used in a very long time, that wasn't properly done. And then it was brought back here to do that. So I was very confused when I got home from my trip to find out that we had bungled this a little bit. And I don't know if that was legal or if that was some other place, but I want us to make sure that if we're offering properties for sale, we've hired a broker, that we actually can really sell them. Because in the end, I think it sends a bad message to people who might be buyers. And this gentleman from across the street, I would have encouraged you to offer just like anybody else. We went through a very long process. We listed the properties. Unfortunately, you did not make an offer at those times. And through government contracting rules, we have to fairly offer the property. We can't wait for properties to be listed, a bid to come in, and then somebody else to come in later and offer something more to undercut the other bidders. So I do think that we're doing the right thing here tonight in selling this. We've made a strong priority of trying to build housing adjacent to light rail stops. We know that we have a housing shortage in our region, and so affordable housing is a really important thing that we have to continue to build. CHW is known to be a very highly qualified, highly competent affordable housing developer, and I think that Mr. Flagg said it exactly. This board does not have jurisdiction over land use. Our only duty here is to sell to the highest, best offer that went through our process that we vetted, and I believe that's what we're doing here today. The entitlement decisions remain with the city per city entitlement processes, and the community will have a chance to engage in those conversations there, but this is not that body. So I want to thank the staff and the board for continuing to work through these surplus sales, and I hope that in the future when we have properties that we're trying to sell, that we handle the process a little bit more cleanly.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Any other director comments? Director Cerna?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to dovetail off of Director Hanson's comments, because I think they're very well taken, and I had a chance to meet with several of the residents and neighbors, business owners and business representatives in the Del Paso, Woodlake, North Sacramento area several weeks ago when it first became apparent to many of us what the intention was of the city of Sacramento in terms of not just this site but other sites that may ultimately host shelter services as well as affordable housing. wanted to chime in and underscore what Steve mentioned, because I think it's really important to understand the difference, the difference between our responsibility here tonight and that of the city council, quite frankly. And that is, we have a fiduciary responsibility on this board, as has been cited fairly specifically tonight, to find the most responsible, responsive prospect for purchasing the property. If we were to be in the business of beginning to cherry pick or hand select, buyers for our surplus property because of some interest in the prospective use that's not in our control, then I think that would be proof that we're ignoring our responsibility on this board. And so that's why I wanted to chime in and say I can't agree enough with Director Hansen's comments. But with that, I also want to encourage those that may disagree or may find the motion objectionable, that there is an appropriate venue, there is an appropriate body certainly to advocate at, and that is the City Council. If you find that the intended use is something that you find either of benefit or objectionable for any variety of reasons, that part of this equation is not over with whatever action the board here will take tonight. Thank you.
Thanks. Director Natoli?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize for being late. It took a long time to get from the county building. To
I
here
understand there's
so.
a little traffic out there, so
Anyway,
we got the message.
We got here. I wanted to say that as we spoke about the last time as it related to the process, and I had a chance to talk with the general manager earlier today, that we may very well have delegated within the closed session for moving forward on certain properties. But I want to just reiterate a comment I made at the last meeting, that it's been certainly common practice over the years that I've served on a number of bodies, that the final disposition of properties, at least for those that have a significant value, there may be remnant pieces that are delegated at staff level, that it's always required, at least in the most part, confirmation by the governing body at the point that the transaction was finalized. And I think it's certainly well within our rights to delegate, but nonetheless, and again, I appreciate that this may have been the outcome of the August 27th closed session as related to potential negotiations on property. But I guess I just want to say that I think it, and again, it's not inappropriate this evening we talk about that delegation and whether it's for this evening's purposes or going forward. And again, it's no slight on Henry or his staff. It's just that I guess it was my understanding that you would always have the final confirmation of any transaction come back to this body. That's not the case. It's been outlined on some of the items, both 12 and 13, but the or 12 and then the two previous items. And so, again, I guess I would like to know from staff, after having said that, what information would be reported out. There's a transaction that's proposed here, and this and other items. Those deal points obviously aren't finalized yet. There's a clear understanding, and maybe you covered that, Brent, previously. And so, if you did,
that's right,
I guess what I want to know for the purposes of reporting this out, if we stick with the delegation, what is exactly? How is the public going to know what that final transaction is?
Sure, we could bring that back at the point at which the final terms are agreed to, and if you so delegate the authority of the GM, we can bring back those terms in an informational staff report to the board. We could bring it back through the GM overview that he does at the beginning of every staff meeting. It's up to the board's request, but we would definitely bring that information back.
Okay. Well, certainly respecting the previous direction, again, I don't have any lack of confidence or problem with our general manager and staff negotiating that, but I think that's one of the reasons why, not only for final confirmation times, but so that's disclosed. I mean, it can be even consent item. I've seen major transactions on consent calendars, but and so again, we're not to the point of a motion here this evening, but I certainly would, at a minimum, ask that this information come back when it's finally, whatever that looks like, in its final form.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Don. Director Chenier?
Thanks, Chair Moore. Really quickly, I just want to
be clear, though, Mr. Natoli, that's coming back as an information item to this board. We're delegating authority if this motion passes.
Well, yeah, I
It's not
didn't
coming
understand.
back
I guess
on-
the motion's been on the floor, so that's my late arrival. I didn't know that, but I
Yeah.
wanted to speak out whether there was a motion on the floor or not, because
Okay.
I just, again, I spoke this evening, I spoke at a previous meeting about this, and I think it's a big enough transaction.
So I would ask for a friendly amendment, just that it come back as an information item within the general manager's report, just to be clear. It's not a
Okay,
consent
Director
item.
Harris and Director Hanson, that okay?
Yes, perfectly clear and fair.
Okay.
Well, I don't necessarily agree to seconding that, because I think that in some ways the purchase and sale will be a public record once it closes. But so I'm fine with that part just being reported out.
Yeah, that's all.
I don't think we need it to be part of the motion in order to do it. But I do think that we'll have to at some point.
Well, there's
I
no-
do think that at some point we will have to refine our process, because there are different views and opinions as to what happened, what is happening, and what should happen. And I think it's, it feels like we're turning peanuts into peanut butter up here. And-
All I'm doing is trying to get a little bit of transparency, so people, this has been a controversial item, just to let people know. That's all.
But I think our process and making sure the process is good is important, and I don't know that this is the place to perfect the process.
I'm not trying to, I'm just trying to get through this item.
Yeah.
That's all.
So you're
If
not
you don't
okay
want-
seconding what?
It's fine for now.
Okay,
But
that's
I don't
fine.
want to establish a precedent
Okay.
on the other properties.
That's fine. So I'm going to support this. Mr. Harris, I appreciate the motion and also the clarification from a number of my colleagues on the board here about what our role is in this and where the appropriate time is if people don't like the decision that's made. So I'm happy to go ahead and call the question.
Okay. Other comments? Are we good? All right.
Just clarification,
Okay.
so it is, to Mr. Schneer's point, you're going to be reported out in the general manager's report?
Correct.
Okay.
That's part of the
Okay,
motion.
okay, all right.
All right. Very good. So with that, we will go ahead and do a voice vote here. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Motion carries at 100 votes, and I'm going to repeat the motion so
Okay.
that everybody is clear with it. So Director Harris moved and Director Hanson seconded a motion to approve items A and B, and also to provide a report out in the GM's report after the final agreement is signed with the terms.
Thank
Right.
you. Okay, so with
Moving on.
that,
Sorry.
next item.
Item number 13, motion to continue the discussion of whether to declare 2051 Evergreen Street surplus property to the meeting of January 8th, 2018.
Okay, and I would imagine this is a pretty quick staff report?
Yeah, it's just to continue
Okay,
this forward, yes.
Great. And I do have a number of requests to speak on this item. Any director questions or comments before we get to that? Okay, so as is clearly stated in the agenda here, so this is just moving discussion of this to January 8th. So I would hope comments are relatively brief on this, but again, the 3-minute rule is there. So we'll start with David Flagg. David, followed by Jane McCauley, and Jane followed by Patty Taylor. Evening, David.
David Blagg with the Del Paso Boulevard Partnerships. I just want to make sure that when this comes back, and I've talked to Henry about this as well, is that there is some discussion about looking at some other bids and some other process. I mean, there are some other people here that would like to make an offer, and I think it's a very valid point. And I realize the city and the RT attorneys are working that out, but if this body, as Supervisor Cerna said, is to only sell the property for the best use and the best price, then I would hope that we would look at some options and look at some different offers.
Very good.
All right.
Thanks, David. Jane, and Jane is followed by Patty, and Patty followed by Elaine Jackson.
Hi, Jane McCauley, Woodlake Neighbors Creating Transparency Neighborhood Association. We started about 5 years ago, our neighborhood association, and the majority of our time we've spent swatting off projects that are unwanted in District 2. We have the psychiatric hospital, another probation facility, a homeless shelter, and now 40% of the city's marijuana cultivation sites. The Evergreen Triage facility on this parcel would just be another strain on our district. I support moving the decision on Evergreen to January. I really hope that this can be a project that the community can come together and be excited about. It's been a long time since that happened. My hope is that this important parcel on our business corridor can be used by all of us, not just Woodlake, but Dixie Ann, Ben Ali, Roblet, Del Paso Heights. We need a change of pace in District 2. We want something to get excited about, something to be proud of. Please collaborate with District 2 neighborhoods on Arden and Evergreen.
All right, thank you, Jane. Patty Taylor. After Patty is Elaine Jackson, and after Elaine is Karen Redmond. Evening, Patty.
Well, hello. I'm also a Woodlake resident. In fact, my son lives 300 yards from the Evergreen site. And my granddaughter, 11 years old, goes to the Woodlake School, which is just down the street and around the corner. So, of course, we're interested in keeping our neighborhood clean and safe. And with the homeless shelter and triage center being proposed there, it's not like don't do it in my backyard. It's not, don't put it in my front porch. It's really, really close. And we feel like they're putting, well, this is my thinking, they're putting a homeless shelter at the other end of our neighborhood, and it's temporary. So they'll be doing the city will be putting a lot of money, and I know there's city council members here, they'll be putting a lot of money into that Railroad Avenue shelter, and then closing it, and then later doing the one at Evergreen. So why not just do the one at Railwood? We're not saying we don't want to do our share in this area, but we are kind of a depressed neighborhood. And I mean, we've been trying to build up Del Paso Boulevard for years and years. I was on one of the groups that we used to have art shows out there and empty buildings, of phantom galleries. We've been working on it for years, and we're making a little progress now. But if we have homeless shelters at both ends, I don't think it's going to benefit us at all. And, the Royal Oaks station and the Arden station, as one of my friends here said, they could really use improvement. Royal Oaks there, I used to take it when I worked at the State Department of Education, and I never felt safe there. It never felt clean. So we do need you to do some more work out there, and maybe that could be the focus of everything, okay?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
Yes.
Yes, okay, all right. So Elaine Jackson, and then following Elaine is Karen Redmond.
Yes, hi. I have some petitions here. 217 people signed petitions in opposition of Evergreen from the neighborhood, and that is to sell it to the city for a triage center. The problem here is some of the people on this board are city council representatives, and they should be looking out for the city too, and that includes our neighborhood. I have a problem with that when they look out for their neighborhood, but they're not looking out for our neighborhood and what the people want here. It really, really bothers me to see that. I feel like they're going behind closed doors and making these deals and don't seem to care that we're important too. If you care about your districts, you should care about our district too. That is not right, and it's not fair. And I hope the RT board will start looking at us as being important too. And if you're going to sell this to the city and they're going to put a triage center there, that is not an improvement to our neighborhood. We are a very, very depressed majority neighborhood. We need improvements. We do not need anything there that's not going to improve our area. We already have so much that's depressed. We have the worst library, I think, in the city. That's terrible. We need the best library in the city for undereducated and underprivileged people. This isn't just about this one parcel. It's about the whole thing with all public agencies not taking care of some of the areas. Now, I surely hope that you guys don't vote to sell this to the city for a triage center, because they are responsible, these gentlemen up here, for voting for this and doing it behind closed doors to our neighborhood. I want representation, and so does everybody in my neighborhood, from the city to look out for our best interests too. We've waited many years. I've lived there 19 years now, and I am very upset at this. I haven't been involved before, but I am going to be now because of this. I want my tax dollars too. And that's basically, can I put this on the record too of
You bet.
these?
Hand it to our city.
Thank you.
Or city clerk, regional transit clerk. Yes, well, I don't know. Yeah. Depends on which city. I knew that was coming.
I'm not sure that's true.
So Karen Redmond, good evening, Karen, and then after Karen is Bernice Krieger.
Good evening. As a resident of North Sacramento and a transit rider, I just came out to support the motion to postpone discussion of the sale of the Evergreen property. And I'd like to urge you in the intervening 2 months to take a look at some actual transit-oriented development for that piece of property.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out this evening, Karen. And Bernice. Is Bernice here? Bernice? There's Bernice. Good evening, Bernice.
Hi, as you mentioned, I'm Bernice Krieger. I'm a 8-year resident of Woodlake. I moved to Sacramento to go to Sac State, go Hornets. Proud Sacramento resident and proud Woodlake neighbor. I chose to purchase a house. I'm the only person in my family who owns a house, first generation immigrant to this country. And the reason why I chose that particular part of Sacramento was, one, because at the time it was affordable, two, because as a person that grew up in a neighborhood in Salinas known as Acosta Plaza, where I knew what to do in case of a school shooting, I knew what to do to stay safe. I really value feeling safe. I really value that currently you can walk down Woodlake, so long as you don't cross Arden, you can be pretty safe. Our neighbors look out for each other, and there is a bit of a threat coming to us through this low barrier homeless shelter. Our community is very active in helping out those less fortunate, and there has been the label NIMBY placed on us because of this shelter. I'm here mainly to hopefully persuade you guys to not continue the motion and just drop it, to label Evergreen as surplus. And if you do choose to bring it up to the next meeting, to hopefully dissuade you guys from labeling as surplus. The reason why is because when you label it surplus, cities that are part of this RT board get right of first refusal, and we know from the conversations that we've had with our council member, with Councilmember Harris and with the mayor, that they are planning on purchasing this property to turn it into a permanent low barrier shelter on our side of Arden. That's 1,000 feet from my house. That's 1,000 feet from a school. And we are very concerned primarily on the aspect that it is a low barrier shelter. That means that there's going to be no requirement whatsoever for drug testing. There's going to be no requirement whatsoever on registering. So worst case scenario, and again, this is as my neighborhood, as the place that I've chosen to live in, it's concerning to me, to the idea that there might be a registered sex offender that is not going to be required to be registering. And again, as the member here position, some of these are very scary worst case scenarios, but unfortunately we live in a world that we have to look at all the different worst case scenarios. So one, I'm here again to hopefully end the motion. There's a lot of stuff that can be done with that property, and as the supervisor here, Serna, said, you guys are right. Your job is to sell the property to try to get money for RT. As an RT rider, getting off on Royal Oaks is a little bit sketchy, but so long as you do it within the hours of commuting time, it's not completely awful. I feel like there's a lot that can be done, and hopefully you guys are looking at it from a way of how to improve ridership. Putting this type of shelter and allowing folks to potentially ride illegally is going to create a lot of problems. So for the sake of addressing the issues of RT, I'm hoping that you guys choose not to put it as surplus. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bernice. Okay, so that concludes requests to speak on this item. So Director comments, Director Harris.
Thank you again, Chair Moran. You know, I would like to just quickly allay a couple of fears. One is a member out here spoke, a community member, indicating that she's fearful about having a homeless shelter at both ends of her neighborhood. I'd like to make it very clear that these would be consecutive if they both happened. They would never be two at either end of your neighborhood. So that said, you know, I understand that people may immediately go to the worst case scenarios, but I would just say this: once we put in place our railroad shelter, if we can demonstrate to the community that it's successful and it improves the neighborhood, I think that we can allay a lot of your concerns moving forward, and certainly that's our intent. And we'll see where we get, but you'll know by April whether or not we're successful with our efforts. That being said, I'd like to move staff recommendation.
Okay, so motion on the floor as far as
Second.
and seconded by, was that Director Budge? Okay. Any other questions, comments from board members? Okay. So with that, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Motion carries by 100 votes.
All right.
Now.
Back to the top.
Back to public addresses of the board on matters not on the agenda.
Okay, so let me first thank those waiting to speak on matters not on the agenda for indulging us to kind of work around some schedules there. So with that, and I appreciate the patience of not only folks, but some of those beautiful, beautiful canines we have in the audience. So with that, we have 8 requests to speak on business from the floor here. So Mike Kelly, we'll start with Mike Kelly. And can we get assistance for some of these folks to get to the podium? All right. Or pass around a microphone, one of the two there, so. All right. All right, so Mike's making his way there. So good evening, Mike. And after Mike is Shannon Dillon, and after Shannon is Margie Donovan. Thank you. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening. My name is Mike Kelly. I'm a resident of Sacramento. And I'm here because on September 25th, my dog was attacked on light rail. I've come to make you folks aware of a couple of things. There are a couple questions you can ask people. There are a couple questions that you can ask people when they bring their supposed service dogs on a train or a bus. And those questions are, is it a service dog? And what task does it perform? I'm hoping that all our RT operators are made aware of this. And I'm just hoping that you folks will do a little bit to try to make light rail in particular a little bit safer for my dog. This is a $65,000 dog. And I count on him daily. And I can't have pit bulls jumping on the face of my dog. I just can't have it. And that's about all I have to say.
All right, great. Thanks for coming out, Mike. And before the other speakers get to sharing some stories, I suppose my request as chair would just be if General Manager and Tim as our Chief Counsel, if you could pass along a note to us, because I know this gets to be an area that there's a lot of uncertainty, and Mike mentioned what what can and cannot be asked of folks as far as what the animal's for and that. So Tim, if you could kind of pass around what the latest legal is on that, and I know these laws come out of the state capitol and stuff we have to follow. So I know that changes, so I just like to hear the latest on that. So very good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We just
Director
could,
Foley?
by way of information, again, I assume there was an incident that was reported, and if not, it was reported this evening, but I would trust there would be some background so we could have some information as to what transpired, either in this case, if we didn't know all of it, and we don't need to have it all here this evening, but I'd like to know what the background is that was referenced in Mr. Kelly's comments. It's pretty serious.
Sure, our police chief Lisa can
Okay, maybe after she gets after we hear from other folks, but I would be
sure.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so Shannon, thank you for wading through that. So Shannon, after Shannon is Margie.
Hi, my name is Shannon Dillon, and I'm here. Some of the people, I'm here on behalf of California Association of Guide Dog Users, which is part of the National Federation of the Blind of California. There are some of the people who are here are part of the organization I'm with. Some aren't, but I wanted to say I am normally a guide dog user. I get a new dog in January, so I'm here with my cane instead of my dog. But I am a guide dog user, and she is my important mobility tool, and she helps me get to and from work on the bus, on the bus and light rail. I don't live in a paratransit district, so I use the buses and light rail, which is fine. But it means that I'm definitely would be impacted by a dog like this, and have been not here, but in other places. So My understanding was, just to fill in a little detail, was that when Mike climbed on the light rail at 16th Street Station, as he was climbing on, a pit bull lunged and grabbed his dog by the face, and he had to, take action to physically separate the dogs, and that the police were called, and we're working on sorting that out. We were just talking with Lieutenant Hines about how to move forward because a report wasn't made. So we're going to talk about working forward with that. But I would like you to know that the dogs are $60,000, around $60,000 to raise and pair a guide dog with a blind individual. They aren't cheap. Often dogs who are attacked, like Mike's dog was, are no longer able to work because they're so traumatized. Their behavior changes in such a way that they can't do the work. Either they're afraid or it negatively impacts their behavior, so they're not appropriate to take around other dogs. But as blind people, we have to take transit, right? We have to take public transit or paratransit if you happen to, if you can do that. So here are things we want. We would like people we want to be able to travel, obviously, safely on light rail and buses without fear of being attacked by any dog. We would like the operators or whoever's in charge of dealing with people who get on the bus to know that they can ask the 2 questions under the ADA, and that those questions are, what's a service dog and what tasks is it trained to perform? We'd like people to learn what tasks are acceptable tasks, because there are examples and there is a line. And we'd also like the police to be aware of Penal Codes 365.5 and 600.2, and those address interference as well as attacks that cause injury or death to a guide dog. And it's my understanding that the police were not aware of those penal code provisions. And finally, we would like to ask that the video be held longer than 3 days, because when Mike tried to get a video, it was too late, a video of the incident.
Okay.
We would also like to be on an agenda for a future board meeting so we can help to continue this conversation.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Great. Shannon, thanks for coming out this evening. So Margie, and following Margie is Roder Oberholzer. Did I do that right? Okay. Almost. Okay, you can correct me. So first we have Margie here, and Margie's got the microphone there. You're on, Margie.
Good evening. Happy to be here. Thank you, Mr. Martin. I'm a guide dog handler of 36 years. If my dog looks confused, he is. I'm not normally in a wheelchair. When I retired in San Francisco, I chose to relocate to Folsom, and I carefully picked where I bought so that I had access to light rail. And I'm within a half a mile of light rail, which when I'm not in a wheelchair, I enjoy walking to and using to come downtown to conduct business. 2 years ago, approximately, my dog was almost attacked on light rail. And unfortunately, my dog's been attacked twice. Fortunately, he's a solid dog and hasn't affected his work. My concern is I have been told numerous times by light rail operators that the union prohibits them from asking the 2 legal questions that can be asked, and Shannon mentioned them, so I won't repeat them. I am asking that this board agendize this topic and look at this in a very serious way. We know that there are many fake service animals out there, but when it falls into RT's jurisdiction, you guys are liable, and liable for possibly a suit, certainly liable for damages. I've encouraged Mike to file a claim, because it did incur veterinary damages. And I really encourage this board to take this up as a very serious topic. I'm shocked to see that some of the board members aren't familiar with the ADA in this area. It's very easy to look up and Google. It's very clear on the ADA website about what can be asked, what can't be asked, and it's very clear that emotional support dogs are not service animals. They're allowed in housing. That's a different rule, different law, but they are not allowed in public or on public transportation. And most of these people are passing their pets off as service animals, and if you ask them what the dog does for them, they'll say it's my emotional support dog. They are not describing the task that the dog is trained to perform, as I would describe my dog is trained to guide me because I'm blind, and that's the answer to the question for me. So I encourage you, because I'm telling you, I don't ride light rail that often. I use paratransit. That's for my safety and my dog's safety. It disappoints me. I purchased a home so I could walk to light rail, but once I get on the train, it's almost like an animal shelter some days, and I'm not kidding. There's so many dogs. I once witnessed one person coming on with 3 dogs, and you know, yes, there could be 2 disabilities, so they have 2 service animals. But 3, no, I'm sorry. There's no excuse. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Margie. And so, okay, explain to me how badly I butchered your name here. What do you...
Okay, my name is Roger Oberholzer.
Roger, okay,
Yes.
thank you. And sorry for the mispronunciation.
No problem, no problem.
Thanks for
It
coming out
happens-
this evening.
It happens all the time. I'm originally from Switzerland.
Okay, that's
and I'm a new resident of Folsom. And I'm the secretary of the California Association of Guide Dog Users of the National Federation of the Blind. As you can see, I have a golden retriever from Seeing Eye. And it is a real problem. I see the problem all the time happening, not only on transit systems, but it happens all the time in Target, it happens in Costco. People are afraid to ask the questions. I have not seen people portraying to be blind and having a guide dog. I have never seen that, even when I used to have sight. But people are like, oh, I don't want to leave Fido at home. So therefore, I'm going to get the vest for him that's a service dog, and I take him to the store. I had so many times on buses and in stores, these types of little dogs bark at my dog, jump at my dog, and it interferes with the guidance of the dog. And what the stores don't seem to understand, and as we've seen, sometimes also the police doesn't understand, there are already laws and penal codes in place to protect these dogs and to protect us. Because if the dog gets interfered with, it can potentially harm us. And it happened in Costco too, that actually one of the employees there said to me, thank you for bringing an actual guide dog and an actual service dog to our store. I mean, that is ridiculous. And I think they're afraid that the exception could happen and someone would have a legitimate service dog, bring it in, and then they would be sued. But that's less likely than us getting harmed. And especially in Mike's case, it is really, really disturbing to me that the police wasn't aware of these penal codes. And it happened to me in another city too, where my guide dog was interfered with. And it takes a long time. You gotta then train the dog you gotta work with the dog endlessly again to get the dog back to a behavior where it overcomes these scenarios, because it is kind of a surprise for the dog. And so I really would encourage RT and the board here to consider, look, I doubt you guys have still videotapes, physical videotapes that you need to keep in storage. I think these videos are being handled today by digital media. There is no reason why these recordings can't be held for 90 days or an extended time. So I really would urge you guys to make sure that this is being seriously looked at, and that the data is being stored longer, and that the operators, as well as the police officers or service personnel that is being called to an incident such as Mike's was, that they are aware of these penal codes, and that RT can therefore be able to protect themselves from potential additional incidences and really unnecessary claims from if their personnel is properly trained.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out this evening.
Thank you.
Mike Barnbaum, and following Mike is Mrs. Sweet. You're after Mike Barnbaum. Okay, Mike, you're up, and then Mrs. Sweet. Sweat. Okay. Sweet sounded better to me. So. Thanks. Okay. Very good. So, Mike, your floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Moore, and members of the board, staff, and audience. Mike Barnbaum. The comments I'm going to make to the board are those of just my own and do not necessarily reflect anything from Ride Downtown 916. But the comments I'm going to make to you are in preparation for an item of your consideration at the December 11th meeting, which, among other things, is to consider the calendar of meetings for 2018 and just take some things into consideration. I have had a brief discussion prior to the start of tonight's meeting with Director Chenier before he had to leave the room, and he did agree on something I showed him off the record, but I'll go over and explain it to you. Typically, the board meets on the second and fourth Monday of every month, and there are months like October, November, and December of this year, which there were some exceptions. One of the things last year, or earlier this year, there were 5 Mondays in the month of May, and the same was the case a year ago, and you met on both Mondays. But I've been looking through the calendar, so to help you make a better educated and informed decision, I have some recommendations for you to consider in conference between now and the next meeting when the vote will come up. So one recommendation is fourth Monday of May 28th, recommend no meeting due to the Memorial Day observance. In September, recommend Monday, September 10th, no meeting in observance of Rosh Hashanah. Correct. This year, the board only held one meeting in the month of October. If the board wanted to continue that, I'd recommend no meeting Monday, October 8th, in observance of Columbus Day. November of next year does present a bit of a challenge, but maybe it can be resolved on this. Most likely, most state, city, county, and federal offices will be closed Monday, November 12th, in observance of Veterans Day on Sunday, November 11th. However, with Thanksgiving being November 22nd, and the Monday of that week is the 19th, the board might want to have a meeting on Monday, the 26th of November. Okay. Thank you. And those are the recommendations to consider for a big vote next month.
All right. Great. Thanks for setting our calendar for us. So
thank you.
Like eliminating some meetings. So let's see. Mrs. Sweat, you are up, and after Mrs. Sweat is Arthur Ketterling. Good evening.
Good morning, or good evening, yes. I'm a longtime friend of Mr. Congressman, County Supervisor Don Natoli, from way back when we had a situation going on with Mr. Gady. And if some of you are familiar with Gady Middle School, we worked with County Supervisor Natoli and various other people to get Gady's name off of anything that had to do with him. Right now, my circumstances are dealing with the Connect card. You say, what's that got to do with Gady? I think it has to do with, to a certain degree, my civil rights. To use this thing properly, before it was another type of a name that you had to use to get on the light rail. I had the card, used the card. For some reason on 13th Street, where you get the card, it didn't work. I had this one person that was supposed to have been a guard or monitor for people riding the light rail unjustifiably. Because she noticed that the card didn't seem to work for her, she had me removed forcibly from the light rail. Yes, it was quite some time ago, but it was something that I felt I was unnecessarily threatened. Another employee that happened to be with the light rail company did notice it, tried to smooth the situation over, and suggested that I do other matters. But I'm saying, please, give your people that are monitoring, people that are riding the light rail, more courtesy. Don't just automatically take it for granted that they are trying to abuse the system. And yes, I have to say, I have seen people definitely abuse the system. But fortunately, most of the guards that are on there to protect us have done a good job. But the Connect card, the only suggestion I can make is try to fix it so that when we swipe that little card to show that we still have money on it, that it shows the accuracy better. Because 1 minute I swipe it and it says I have $10. The next minute I swipe it, it says I'm broke. And I've only gone like $2 or $3 worth of riding, and I'm saying, okay, before somebody, sometimes you have to be proactive in fixing things before you get stung again. And I would like to say, for the most part, RT has done a good job. I enjoy, for the most part, riding, and I love the city of Folsom.
Okay,
I love the city.
I'll give you an extra couple of minutes if you want to keep going.
Thank you.
Seriously, though, thank you for coming out, Mrs. Sweat, and it always helps us to hear feedback like that, very constructive criticism. So we'll make sure that those things don't happen in the future. So thanks for taking the time to come out and recognizing that our director, Natoli, has been here for a long, long time. So.
Yes, he has. So he knows me from way back when. Thank you.
Okay, so Arthur. And then after Arthur is Jeffrey Tartagia.
I want to mention something of what Mrs. Sweat said, but let me get that down in a minute. But what I come here officially on was that to report about a certain driver. I know the coach number, and I know what their coach looks like. It's an all-white paratransit coach, number 426. And I would like to let you know, I want to let you know before this meeting started, I called paratransit and I told them of what was happening, and what is happening, whoever the driver is on paratransit is leaving their drive, like the door that they get out of the vehicle, leaving the door wide open where cars come through along on the street and they can get in a terrible accident, and you would be sued and paratransit would be sued, and I don't want that to happen. And the person I talked to at paratransit, she said that she would refer it to her supervisor, and I gave her my phone number, and I told her that I'm on my way coming to a regional transit meeting, and I'm going to report it to them also. And they said, yes, please do. That's what we want to hear. And she said that is very dangerous, and that driver should not be doing that. And it could cause, this isn't the first day either. They pick up people there at DDSO Employment Plus, and each day, and it's happened more than once. And I'm grateful and thankful that no accident has happened, but cars does whiz right through. And even today, I was in a taxi, and the driver taxi driver yelled out and said, "Close your door, close your door." And and it was still open.
Okay.
And as far as Ms. Sweat, just of what she was mentioning, just briefly, I was on the regular regional transit bus, and before my card would be approved, he had to go through it about 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
And just to let you know, I don't have the paper on me, but I did write the coach number down and everything, and I will report it to RT,
Okay.
to the advocacy department.
Yeah, we need to hear about incidents like that, just see if our equipment needs to be cleaned up. It's like that, so.
So otherwise, that is all that I have to report.
Great, thanks. Thanks for coming out, Arthur.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Director Jennings wanted me to point out that you're still a Raiders fan this season. So thank you for that, Arthur. Okay, Jeffrey Tartagia.
Prevarication. Programs. Policies. Right now, you had an item that was number 7. You are out there putting right now that you don't have any programs for I-80, although it's been a year, and Henry knows it's been before he even was chairman, or should we say general manager, that there has been a problem with I-80 and the elevator. Now you have $3 million or more that you have assigned out there to move the I-80 light rail station. You also are getting rid of the 65th light rail station. Now, there was an environmental report that was out there, and one of the questions back then I asked about parking. Now you're going to try and put 7+ buses on the street. You also have the megabus there as well. If you, board of directors, don't know about these things, it's because with once-a-month meetings, you don't seem to have the opportunity to find out about these things. The MAC meetings discuss a number of these items. You apparently don't seem to get access or know what's going on there. The ACE, and this is where I go, Mr. Steve Henson. There's a bunch of things in your area that's going on in construction, and it seems like RT is the last one to know about them. Please do better to make sure that when it's going to interfere, 5th Street, 9th Street, that RT knows about them because it affects bus routes. You are about to embark or are trying to embark for a year on a study of route, really, should we say, examining, yet you're not doing a thing for the centers that Elk Grove changed the way they go through Sacramento. YOLO's changed the way they go through Sacramento, as capital and as the other sections through there. So please, I will say to you is I'm disappointed, and will say to you also that board, it sounds like you make decisions and then you ask for public input. As I think every time in every other organization you've had, when you've gotten public input, it's made you make better decisions. Right now were 2 meetings dealing with real estate. I won't go further. Long list of problems with Connect Card. $1.5 million, is that going to be the annual cost to run it?
All right, thank you, Jeffrey. All right, so that concludes items on, request to speak on items not on the agenda, so moving along.
Moving along, General Manager's report, item number 9.
Right. All right, Henry, what you got?
Good evening, Chair Moran, members of the board, and the public. First, we will present some employee recognitions. SACRT publicly recognized the employees with 20 years or more of service. This is a great way to boost employees' morale and show that we value everybody at SACRT. For the last quarter, the three award recipients with us tonight are Juan Fernandez, Transportation Supervisor for Police Service. Michael Amaro, Transportation Supervisor. And Uberto Gidotti, bus operator with 40 years of service. 40.
You better give that guy a medal. 40 years of driving bus? Holy smokes. Thank you. I guess. I know. But I wouldn't drive a bus like that.
The minute he got a driver's license.
Amazing.
Secondly, I'd like to talk about our Sacramento holiday bus.
We do want to. Do any of our award recipients wish to say a few words to the microphone while you got an opportunity? Umberto, 40 years.
Now this award on behalf of my wife, who put up with me for 37 years.
Is she here?
Yeah.
Can you introduce her there?
I also want to mention my father, who just recently passed away, October 8th. He was a driver from 1951 to 86, and so I kind of followed in his footsteps.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank Regional Transit for providing me with a good livelihood and for the benefits, and I'm really appreciative all these years. Thank you.
Thank you for the 40 years. Anybody else like the microphone there? Opportunity? Okay, pass. All right, thanks. And thank you, Director Jennings, for having me invite them up there. So with that,
I have some more stuff.
Back to Henry here.
Yeah. So as a thank you to riders and wishes for happy holiday season, Sacramento invites all public to take a free ride on our holiday bus. The colorful Sacramento holiday bus will be easy to spot as it travels on different routes through the Sacramento region from Friday, December 1st through Monday, January 1st. Passengers have the opportunity to deposit a donation in the fare box, and all donations will be benefiting the American Red Cross and the California wildfires. Also, in honor of those who have served our country, Sacramento has invited military servicemen and women to ride free on Veterans Day. We want to send a message that we are appreciative of their dedicated service. Free rides will extend to veterans, active military personnel, and military family members. Total 1,400 these free rides were taken in that day. Lastly, I would like to briefly provide some update on American Public Transportation Association APTA's annual meeting and the Metro Chambers Austin study mission. Early last month, APTA, the largest public transportation association, hosted a jam-packed annual meeting and a record-breaking expo in Atlanta, Georgia, with a total attendance 12,910 people. During the three-day events, over 800 vendors from more than 25 countries displayed the thousands of products, including 68 buses, a heavy rail car, a light rail car, a train, and plus some autonomous vehicles. U.S. DOT Secretary Elaine Chao and FTA Acting Administrator Jay Williams spoke at the annual meeting and visited 200,000 square foot expo floor. Social media was jammed with Rally for Transit message, which is a virtual advocacy initiative that mobilized attendees and public transportation supporters nationwide to urge Congress to fully fund federal transit program. The message reached nearly 1 million people on Facebook and Twitter within that 1 week. 1 million people were reached. Also, we're happy to say the first time in many years, SAC-RT had 2 K board members attending the annual meeting. During the stay in Atlanta, Chair Moran, Vice Chair Kennedy, and staff had a highly productive and a closed-door meeting with top FTA leadership, including Acting FTA Administrator Jan Williams and FTA Chief of Staff. We also joined nearly 130 people from Sacramento region a trip to the Austin Metro Chambers Austin study mission. Director Budge was the honorable chair of that trip, or vice chair, or chair. Co-chair.
Along with Director Harris.
Great. Yeah. I was trying to say that. Some simple takeaways from the APTA meeting and Austin study mission, especially when we were in Austin, we were surprised. We actually were encouraged that both Austin Transit Agency and SAC-RT are conducting the route optimization to grow ridership, and both regions have high expectations for public transportation. Austin does have $240 million in local sales tax dedicated to transit, 1 penny of the local sales tax, while 9 transit agencies in 6 county Sacramento region only receive 1/6 of 1 penny, total $45 million annual revenue for transit. So there's a big differences between 2 regions. The takeaways from APTA meeting include some we brought economic viability and social equity to the communities wherever public transportation goes. And investing in today's transportation is investing in the future of the community. And collaboration, innovation, and regionalism are the keys to success. And certainly transit means business. Easy access to transit is non-negotiable for business growth. To achieve a regional economic growth, a region needs to first build a robust transit system before the new business and the young workforce will come to this region. During this disruptive and transformational time, while Atlanta, Austin, and Sacramento all realized that public transit is vital to the economic development and social equity, Atlanta does the best by adding additional half-cent sales tax for transit last year on top of its existing 1 penny sales tax for transit, which allows Atlanta to launch its largest expansion and huge business development with fast-growing community and lots of new business moving into Atlanta. So to end my report, please see a short 1 or 2 minutes video of the speech by the Atlanta mayor in APTA annual meeting.
And thanks to the work of everyone at MARTA, City of Atlanta voters last year overwhelmingly, with more than 70% of the vote, agreed to appropriate $2.6 billion to expand our system. Our sense is when that amount is matched, it will exceed $5 billion. That's because the people of Atlanta know and understand that MARTA is not just a collection of bus routes or rail lines. It is indeed a lifeline for working families, our business community, millennials, and young people. And it's not just folks living inside the city who feel that way. In 2014, Clayton County voted to join the system in a landslide fashion as well, the largest expansion of our system to date. I know a few other counties who now wish they had MARTA too. Metro Atlanta counties not served by MARTA are now seeing more and more companies choose to locate their operations on MARTA lines near MARTA stops. NCR moved 5,000 jobs into the heart of the city of Atlanta, largely due to MARTA. Pulte Homes moved their headquarters from Michigan, right next to a MARTA line, largely due to MARTA. State Farm, with an 8,000-person campus not in the city of Atlanta proper, wanted their home to be near MARTA. Mercedes-Benz, Porsche made the same decision. High-tech businesses are flocking to Midtown Atlanta to be near Georgia Tech and its innovation hub. But it's also because Midtown is served by 3 MARTA rail stations. NCR, Honeywell, GE Digital, UPS, and Anthem are all opening or expanding operations here because of convenient access to transit. They don't want their workers wasting valuable time being stuck in traffic. The skilled young talent is less interested in commuting by car these days. They want to take transit, they want to walk, and they want to ride bikes to work. That's one of the reasons why we invested in the Atlanta streetcar when we won a $47 million Tiger grant from the Obama administration. That federal funding was vital to us starting a streetcar system that will continue to connect our neighborhoods and open the door to economic vitality.
That concludes my report. I'd like to invite Vice Chief Lisa just a very brief security.
Very good. Thank you, Henry. Good evening, Lieutenant.
Hi. Chair Moore and members of the board, I have a brief security update for you. Tonight I thought I would approach some of my Adopt-A stations, so we're going to start with Alkali Flats. So Alkali Flats was one of my original 4 that I adopted and got the cooperation from a sergeant to help with this project. Our current camera structure at Alkali Flats is just underneath the overhangs that we have, so we have a very poor vantage point to seeing what's going on there. We get a lot of complaints about narcotics activity and otherwise. So we were very progressive, and the sergeant reached out to La Valentina Apartments, who is the apartment complex that you see right there. It's a very big apartment complex that gets transportation funding to help support their low-income housing. So we came up with a plan to have these 3 cameras, which you can see the different angles. They'll cover 12th Street, which is the entryway to downtown Sacramento, which I think is huge. They'll all 3 be pan, tilt, zoom cameras. And we came up with a crazy idea to ask them to fund half, and they've agreed to do that. As a matter of fact, they already have the check ready for us. They're so anxious to work with us on this project. Watton I-80, as you know, is one of my Adopt-A Station projects. The Rancho Cordova Police Department has built 8 police observation devices, and on my next slide I'll show you a picture of them. And we're going to deploy one at Watton I-80, Watt West, and Roseville Road. I think that'll be very beneficial for deterrence, prevention, and we have a lot of activity down there, and it's just one more tool in our toolbox. I just wanted to update you that I have 1 Paladin guard, so we've been able to regain control of that station to the extent that I feel 1 guard can do the job, even so much so that I have that 1 guard with their car patrol Watt West and Roseville Road, which is a huge improvement, because as you know, we started with 1 officer, went to 2 Paladin guards. I'm not going to leave that station in the sense that I feel that now that we've regained control, we still have problems, but they're much more minor in comparison to what we originally were dealing with. The gates are still being closed every night, a half hour after the trains stop. The gates on the stairway, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. There's been no issues. Paladin closes them at half hour after service, and they open up a half an hour before service starts. We're using the PA system very heavily at Wattenai 80. And we still have SOC video coverage 24/7. So that's kind of where we're at with Wattenai 80. So the Zinfandel is another one of my stations, and I have a great relationship with the police chief of Rancho Cordova, Chris Pittman. We get our Rancho Cordova police officer that they're paying half of his salary the 19th, so in a few days. Rancho Cordova built us these pods, so there'll be a blue light. I don't know if you can see the little bubble on the top, but there'll be a constant flashing blue light. And I thought it was great to incorporate both of our police stickers to show people that we're watching them and that we're monitoring our stations. So we're going to be deploying these at all 4 Rancho stations. We've already picked our locations. We're leaning more heavily towards, in some of the stations like Sunrise, we're going to lean more towards heavily on the parking lot because we have a lot of activity there and there's not a lot of coverage currently. Also with Rancho Cordova, just want to throw out a couple highlights. We arrested a subject. One of the Security Operations Center folks was watching live video, and he sees a guy stuff a gun down his pants on a train, and so he calls it in, and Rancho Cordova beat us there. Our officers met, and we worked in cooperation with them. The gun he shoved down his pants was a BB gun, but the gun he had in his backpack was a real gun. So it was really awesome police work and cooperation, and another thing I was just sitting back there emailing the chief of Rancho on was he sent me a message, hey, Lisa, this guy's posting stickers at our station that you can buy marijuana. You just have to meet at the Zinfandel station. So I was able to email the chief, well, we beat you to it. We already did an undercover operation and we arrested the guy. So we're all over working with Rancho Cordova PD and we're quickly responding to any of these kind of crazy things happening. But those are some good examples of good police work that we're doing. Lastly, I was going to cover this new plan. I spoke with Henry a while ago, and we kind of came up with this new idea of, I think that the perception of safety is what's most important, and the way that people feel safe is to have TAs on trains. So I redeployed the TAs effective last Sunday. There's 10 more transit agents on trains. So we're at robust 90 to 95% staffing on all trains, Monday through Friday, 5:30 to 7. After 7, it's 100% staffing. So I just took some of the transit agents out of stations, 10 to be exact. With my new plan with the transit agents at stations, I'm having them ride between stations. So again, putting more transit agents on trains. So doing some sort of random patrol between 1 or 2 stations versus just sitting still and just, I think plus it's more interesting for the transit agents to ride the train, have a little break, see what's going on, and we're going to try this plan. As a matter of fact, like I said, it went into effect Sunday. That concludes my presentations. Any questions?
Fantastic. Thanks for all the great work, Lieutenant.
Sure.
Yep. Director Natoli?
Well, first, just compliment Lisa certainly on her efforts. I was curious when we had some of the earlier testimony, and maybe you can't get into specifics, but can you give a little synopsis about what
Absolutely.
engagement with folks, and kind of tell us how you're handling some of those situations?
I had the opportunity to speak with all of them before the meeting, so that was really helpful. But that day in question, Mike got on a train. There was a pit bull rider, a man that had a pit bull on some sort of rope or tether, and he was on a train. Apparently there was some sort of confrontation between the two. Our officers, we have 2 bomb dog officers, and they're the ones that actually happen to respond, so they're dog handlers and take particular interest in the subject matter. When they got there, they couldn't see any injuries, which was confirmed by Mike. I also talked to Fox 40 News because they did a story on it, and she even said that there was no way to see the injuries. So we weren't aware of any injuries, so that's why there was no citation. Mike has asked for a report, so I'm going to take care of that with him and make sure that we go back and document the incident. But I'm working heavily with Janice and Tim Spangler on service animals because this might shock you, but people lie to us all the time. And so every time we ask if they have the 2 questions, if they have a service animal and if they're trained, everybody's a yes. So it really presents a problem for the safety of our riders. So we're working on looking at every angle possible.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa.
Great, thank you. Mark, you had something to add there?
I'm sorry, if I could just add one thing too. In the course of the testimony, there was the comment made that there was some union prohibition against asking the questions, and that's not the case. Our transit officers are trained to ask the questions. Our operators are trained to ask the questions. I think Lieutenant Hines' comment about people aren't truthful is kind of the bottom line here for us. It makes it very difficult to enforce.
Sure.
All right, Director Kennedy?
All right, I wasn't going to say anything, but I won't draw this on because I know it's not agendized or anything, but on that particular subject, I was on a train and I witnessed Mr. Kelly ask the transit agent to ask the questions of a dog that was next to him, and the transit agent refused to ask those questions and was actually quite rude. So we do need to continue to provide training to all of our officers.
Definitely unacceptable.
Great. Director Jennings?
Yeah, and at some point in time, because this isn't agendized, I just want to understand a little bit more about the video aspect of it, whether or not it's just a 3-day rule or whether it can be held for a longer period of time in order to get the story, the real story behind it. If we have video evidence of an assault that has taken place and we have it, then we should be able to look at that and be able to see what we didn't see physically. So I just want to make sure that if we have that and there's no ruling to keep it past 3 days, I'd like to get a report back on why there's a 3-day rule versus a longer period of time.
It's a 7-day rule, and in this case, there was no evidence the dog had been attacked, so there was no reason to, again, when they looked at the dog, and there was no injuries to the dog at the time. So, and Mike had told the officer he didn't want to report. He told me that he told the officer he does want to report. So usually we have no capability, but we certainly, if we're aware of an assault, we can keep the video longer. That's no problem.
So I just think from the public standpoint, if the public is thinking that we have a 3-day rule as opposed to a 7-day rule, there's some education that we need to do as well.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Other board member comments, questions? I do have a request to speak on the general manager's report, Mike Barnbaum. And Mike, it says meeting calendar. You already went over that in great detail. You got more for us?
Actually, yeah, want to talk about on the general manager's report. There's always a section about an RT meeting calendar, and I do want to follow up with stuff Lisa said. I'd like to see if that could be expanded to RT meeting calendar, events, and partner calendar. Perhaps events where transit could be very attractive to use to and get marketed to the riders, being put on the RT calendar and in your packet. One good example, a speaker from the Woodlake area earlier this evening mentioned where she goes to school. And a couple of us in the audience with our pinky finger did stingers up. The Causeway Classic is at 2 p.m. on Saturday, which would allow even riders in Folsom to go to the game and get back from the game. When the games were at 6 p.m. at Hornet Stadium, you could get there, but you might have to use a ride-sharing company to get back because there might not have been special service if there was not also a Golden One Center event that night attracting folks of over 10,000 or more. Just good point on that. The other thing on safety and security. When I ride to do whatever business I have to do, I also take to the back of my head, especially on rail, to help the system out and ride undercover. And if there is something suspicious, I really encourage people to use the reporting app, the Alert SAC RT, on their mobile device. It's really handy. Here's a photo of a gentleman I caught making music and banging on Mark Lonergan's public property, uncalled for. And I just showed Mark the photo before coming up to speak. You don't do that. Another photo, this gentleman boarded at the Zinfandel station and was very belligerent to Lisa's transit agents. When asked to show his fare passer ticket, he would always say he wants an ambulance. He needs help. This was reported. The agent was in danger. I said to the agent, all right, I'm going to help you. I'm going to report this through a system. He was removed at the 59th Street station on the Gold Line for failure to cooperate with the agent's request.
Great. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so that concludes the request to speak on the general manager's report. So with that, next item, please.
Next item is item number 10. You have two resolutions in front of you. Provide direction on how to proceed with the sale of the 65th Street property. Resolution A is to reaffirm delegation of authority to the general manager CEO to enter into a purchase and sale agreement between SAC-RT and Symphony Development for the sale of the 65th Street property located in Sacramento, California, or a resolution revoking the April 10th, 2017 delegation of authority to the GM CEO to enter into a purchase and sale agreement between Sacramento Regional Transit and Symphony Development for the sale of the 65th Street property located in Sacramento, California, and requiring staff to bring back a final agreement for board approval. And Brent Bernicker is here.
All right,
Thanks a
great.
lot. Thanks,
Good
Cindy.
evening again, Brent.
Good evening. So the subject property that we're talking about now is the 65th Street location. The total acres are about 2.23. The portion of property that we're currently talking about is currently being used right now for a transfer point, a bus shelter, and restrooms for SAC-RT operators. If this property is sold, SAC-RT will still retain ownership of the property for that same purpose. It will be shifted around. I'm going to skip on to the next slide. Thank you. So this is the visual that you see of 65th Street. The area in orange right there is the area that we're looking to sell. The area above there, so let me just kind of back up here. The area that's in orange borders the 65th Street on the left. Down below is Q Street, and the Folsom Boulevard is on the top portion of the map here. Along with this area, I want to just kind of bring up a couple points. The area in yellow is owned by another private party. One of the buyers that's interested in 65th is actually looking to purchase that land as well. So this is going to be a really interesting area for the region where we could get a lot of economic vitality if that purchaser buys the land that we're referring to as 65th Street as well as that yellow area. There's also some plans on the lower section of this map right here, and we've already got another developer that's worked on the Hampton Inn location. There's another future hotel that's planned next to the Hampton Inn. There's future retail to the left of that hotel area. There's a plaza right above there, and then above the plaza is our light rail station. That plaza will be really nice if this keeps going forward, where there's a little retaining wall in our light rail station that will be removed, and it will give a more open feeling, so people that are riding the train will also be able to experience the retail at that area. So there's a lot of economic vitality that's going on in this area. And before I go through our sales process, I would like to have David Solomon, who's here today, our senior architect, to provide the board with information regarding the bus shelter relocation, because there's been a lot of questions that have been asked. So David.
Good evening, David.
Thanks, Brent. So the 65th Street, University 65th Street station, the light rail station itself, there is no proposal to relocate it. That would be rather difficult to do. We have been working since 2006 or earlier with SHRA. Originally, this was a redevelopment site, and the proposal was to move the bus transfer center. Can you go back to the previous? Oh, there. Actually, no. There was a proposal to move the bus transit center from its current on-site or off-street location to an off-site or on-street location, basically vacating the property we have to allow for a more dense transit-oriented development The project was conceived in a way to improve pedestrian safety, and I'll show a little bit in a couple slides how that occurs. We always considered we would maintain the current operations, the same number of bus berths would be retained, and it would provide an opportunity to renovate the station, improve the amenities there with new shelters, more landscaping, and wider sidewalks that provide more space for people to wait. So on the previous slide, Brent showed there are currently 6 bus stops on our property, plus another one on 67th Street, which is also RT property. And then we lease space to Megabus on the light rail station for their stop as well. So we have currently 7 RT bus routes being served at 6 berths on our current property. You will also notice in the photo, all of the circulation is on site, which creates a lot of underutilized space in this area. With the surrounding developments, the F-65 to the west across 65th Street, renovation of the shopping center to the east, and now the hotels going up to the south, this is absolutely an opportunity site. So, next. So our proposed project would upgrade 67th Street to a public city street. As I mentioned before, it's currently an RT property. We would retain 6 bus berths, as we currently have. 3 of them would be on the west side of the new 67th Street going southbound. 3 on the south side of Q Street heading eastbound, which would allow for a direct rail-to-bus or bus-to-rail transfer, which currently does not exist. And in the block of Q Street between 65th and 67th Streets, we would add a fenced median, which will help channel pedestrians to the crosswalks. The intersection of Q Street and 67th would be controlled by a stop sign. Folsom and 67th would add a new traffic signal, and we would make some modifications to the intersection of 65th and 65th and Q Street as well. So this is the plan, the proposed plan that we provided to the developer, and the developer in turn would submit to the city as part of their entitlement process. This has been a long process. As I mentioned, we started in 2006. We've had this plan reviewed and vetted internally by our operations, planning, engineering, and scheduling departments. I personally met with MAC, with the Mobility Advisory Council, 3 times. First on site in early 2009, and then again at meetings in 2009 and 2010. The project was put on the shelf when the plans were completed in 2013, lacking funding. But now we have a developer who's willing to build this for us, and this is what we've got.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, David. So now we're to continue on with some of the items you saw on the Arden area. This is basically the key timeline of events. What's different about this versus the Arden area? With the Arden area, we had to come back to the board one extra time. With this property, it was actually a little bit more clean cut. There wasn't that need to come back. So basically, again, in November, we started with seeking board approval, or direction, I should say, to start selling property. We hired Turton. We had an internal committee look at these offers. One offer we brought forward in April was for Symphony Development, and I'll go through that in just a bit. At that point in time, the board gave authority for the GM to enter into a contract. We obtained an appraisal in May. At the last board meeting, we sought approval to declare it surplus with a transit emphasis on that. And then currently, right now, what we're doing is we're providing the board with this information about the buyer and the other buyer that was interested in the property, and then seeking reaffirmation. Okay, and again, we had a marketing brochure that was handed out for this property. And in this case, we had about 44 buyers that our broker met with. The land was originally marketed as joint development. As we talked about, we've changed it to surplus. The buyer was informed RT's continued interest in the property. That made it a little bit more complex, as David kind of discussed some of our interests. And it's a great location, but what we also found out from buyers is it's a small size. So without owning the parcel above RT, that would make it very difficult for some other buyers to have that same interest. So we had 2 offers on this deal, on this property. Both offers initially did not include a relocation cost and a component. We informed them that the buyers that they did have to include that. As a result, the second buyer actually declined to participate. So let's just talk about the first offer. The first offer was with Symphony Development. This is the statewide corporation that specializes actually in student housing, retail, and multifamily. What we found with Symphony is that the offer that first of all, they had plans for a development. It's a 145 unit student housing project with potentially another 10,000 square feet of retail. And included in that, they said they would cover the cost of the bus shelter and the relocation of the restrooms, and also some street work that's going to be required on 67th. The final offer came in at $2 million, plus the cost for those shelter relocations and restrooms. That's estimated about $1 million, but in addition to that, there's also that street work that needs to get done that's going to bring that other value even higher. The close of escrow is about 180 days after due diligence. And then I'd like to go to the second offer. The second offer was with Laguna 2 Real Estate Group. This is another really good developer with experience in master plan communities, recognized locally and nationally. The buyer was interested in mixed use and retail, but again, the buyer rescinded their offer after they weren't interested in paying that additional cost for the relocation, and they also had an interest in another property, and we'll come to that in the next issue paper. So again, both buyers were very strong. However, Symphony was the one that came through, and they decided to give us a final offer. And we're really excited about their planned development. It's very transit supportive. We think this is the best course of action to move forward. Student housing is perfect in that area. Sac State is only a few blocks away, and giving this option for the students, we see a potential for an increased ridership. Also, the students have family members and friends that will want to visit, so we'll be able to see potentially more ridership from that as well. And it's really close to, obviously, the bus and light rail, so this will be a great opportunity for us. So right now we're at a position where we have 2 options available for us. We can move forward the negotiations by reaffirming the delegation of authority for the general manager to enter into a contract with Symphony Development for the sale of 65th Street. Or what we can do is we can revoke that authority that was given to the GM and actually bring back a final agreement for the board for approval. At this point in time, we recommend option 1. Again, that speeds us along. We see this as a really good project, and we'd like to start seeing a really good growth in ridership, and we see this as a good way to do that.
Okay, thank you, Brent. I do have a couple requests to speak on this item, but Director, comments, questions before I get to...
I'll go after.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, very good. So Helen O'Connell, can we get a microphone to Helen there? And after Helen is Stacy Wentling.
Hello, Helen O'Connell. I'm concerned that the relocation of the bus route over layovers would be really confusing to people, and I'm hoping that maybe they can make sure that people with visual impairments and physical impairments are going to be able to cross over the street to get to some of those buses, because it looks dangerous to me, and I'm in a wheelchair, so it makes me a little unnerved that you need to cross over the street to get to the buses, even though it's right there by the light rail.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Helen, and I'm sure that'll be way at the top of the list as this gets redeveloped. So Stacy, where is Stacy? Hi, good evening, Stacy.
Good evening, Stacy Wentling. I'm a board member with Organized Sacramento as well as SacTrue. We would actually suggest that you support Resolution B for a few concerns that we have. One, Symphony develops student housing, and I don't see how that would actually increase ridership. This campus is so close, and thinking about this property being surplus and wanting to make this available to the community members to access housing, to access their jobs, to access grocery stores and stuff like that. This is a very kind of isolated area in which this housing is close enough to Sac State, and those students are not taking the transit. They're walking to campus. So I would maybe step back and have a discussion, and maybe even ask for an analysis of just where this idea of supported ridership would be coming from. And then also, I know that it was mentioned that this was presented in front of the MAC board almost 7 years ago. I know this project has been in the making for a while. However, I would encourage that dialogue to be kind of reopened, because if we're going to be moving forward with a project, then we should, but the city changes, right? So like things change, and I think needs change as well. So I think bringing that open to them, let's maybe open that up for some input and feedback. And just again, thinking about it being surplus, and this cell could really impact the ability of running high frequency routes through the station. And there just needs to be some more details of this analysis to think about rider connectivity, location accessibility, impact to transit through all phases of construction. And then also, the design specifications presented to the MAC board like now, as opposed to 7 years ago. So that would be our suggestion, was just to vote for, or motion, recommend option B.
Okay, great. Thanks for coming out, Stacy. Okay, so that concludes requests to speak on this item. So director comments, Director Harris?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, in full disclosure, this property is in my council district. I can tell you, having lived very close to this area for 30 years, it hasn't changed much. Many proposals have been put forth for this area, amongst them an In-N-Out burger, a pizza parlor. This is a truly transit supportive use. Student housing is desperately needed in the area. As you know, Sac State is a commuter campus. Thousands of people travel by car, often singly, to Sac State daily, creating a tremendous traffic jam on Folsom Boulevard. These couple hundred plus units in this location are an ideal opportunity to create energy in the area. There is potentially, and I think it will go through, a grocery planned nearby to support a larger student population in this area. To find a developer willing to buy a piece of land for $2 million and then put approximately $3.5 million into relocating bus loading area is extraordinary. This is a one-time opportunity. My friends, I can tell you with certainty, having looked at this for years now, this is really tremendous. And as Brett said, taken in conjunction with the Hampton Inn and Suites, 2 hotels on the other side of the light rail line, this will probably be the most energetic light rail station in the system. I believe that, and having talked to Mr. Solomon and others at RT about the bus relocations, that they have a plan that's fully functional and will actually make both bus loading and offloading actually easier and better facilitated in that area compared to the kind of mayhem that happens there currently. It's really sort of a hodgepodge. There is a tremendous amount of wasted space. This developer, Symphony, is engaged with the adjacent property owner, and it looks very good for that deal to consummate as well, meaning that this will be the first truly transit-oriented development that I've seen go in perhaps ever in Sacramento, which is something that's been desired ever since the onset of regional transit. This is a very active corridor, and let's see if I have any. So it's a delicate deal, you know. We delegated authority to Henry to enter into negotiations more than 6 months ago. And a lot of negotiations have gone down. As I said, this is a very difficult deal to consummate. We've got a great developer online. Without hesitation, I would like to move option A to reaffirm delegation to the general manager to further this deal and bring it to fruition. As I said several times, this is a great opportunity for RT.
So the second was Director Cerna, and Brent, can you just throw up the two options there that you had as far as, there we go. That's perfect. Okay, so Director Kennedy?
Yes, I too support this project. The proposal. I just want to add one more thing on top of everything that Director Harris said, and that's because it was stated that there was concern that putting student housing, if that's what does go here, next to a light rail station isn't a transit use. And I must disagree. There are many, many students that choose where to live based upon the fact that it's close to transit. And they're high ridership. And so I think that this actually is very transit oriented if it does end up being student housing.
So, other Director Natoli?
Yeah, just very quickly, I would support the motion, but I would ask that as we did item previously this evening, and we have yet another one to come that is not as baked as maybe this one is, as relates to parking spaces and so forth. And so I would ask if it's the maker of the motion's concurrence that we actually have this report out in our general manager's report at such time as it is, the terms of the deal are finally consummated. Maybe they're not close on this one, but I will be consistent. I think with those that we've delegated that we need to have that final report out. So.
So I'd like to amend my motion to include a report back on the general manager's report when he manages to make this deal come to fruition and bring it back to the board.
Okay, second's good with that. Okay, other director comments, questions? All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, nice work.
Motion passes at 100 votes, and for lack of doing it, it's the same motion from the last time.
There you go. Thank you for the brevity. Yeah.
Item number 11. Almost the same as item 10. Providing direction on the sale of a portion of the Power Inn Park and Ride lot property. You have the same resolutions, A to reaffirm and B to revoke and bring back for final. And
All
Brent
right.
is here again.
Great,
Okay.
thank you. Good
So
evening, Brent.
the Power Inn property that we're going to discuss is about approximately 12.75 acres. What makes this a little bit unusual is there's some parking spaces. So depending on the amount of parking spaces RT would retain and some of the power lines that are intercepting this land could drop this to about 7.5 acres. So we're still working on that right now. Like I said, there's about 299 spaces currently. Since 2011, we've never averaged more than 100 spaces in any month, and the average uses is around 75 spaces. As such, this site would be a perfect site for a developer to come in and utilize this location to bring a transit component for the unused area. So this map that you'll see right here is the area we're talking about is in the red area right here. One of the challenges we have with this property is there's only one entrance and exit in this property, so that's something that we kind of dealt with when we were dealing with the sales process. So again, we've kind of gone through the timeline of events. The same, if you kind of think back to what we just did on 65th Street, the same events took place, pretty much exactly the same. So I'm going to skip this slide and move on to the next. We also had a brochure that we handed out discussing this property, discussing some of the benefits of this property and some of the challenges. The next slide, what we cover is we met with about 52 potential buyers and realtors. The land was again marketed as joint development. The buyers were informed that RT would retain some parking. And again, it's a great location with that one clause of one entrance and one exit. In this case, there's about 3 properties that were received. The buyers were screened, and the property ranged from a ground lease option to a single detached community to mixed use. So the first offer that I'll talk about today is the land lease option, and that was with SCORE soccer centers. They provide a recreational competitive environment for youth and various youth and adults. They actually came in with a ground lease option over 20 years at $5,000 a month with a 5-year annual increase. However, this was brought back to the board in January since it didn't meet the objective of selling or leasing to a transit-oriented buyer. This offer was rejected. The second offer we had was from Lewis Homes. The planned use was a single family detached residential with small commercial and retail options. That offer was at $1.65 million. The purchase price was well below the market value, so no action was taken. And then the third option was with John Sweet, a developer. Also, if you recall from that last 65th arrangement, John Sweet works with Laguna too, and he's the developer with experience in master plan communities. He came in with a concept of student housing, multifamily housing, retail, and a hotel. The final offer that came forward on this property was up to $3.9 million, depending on the number of parking spaces. The buyer is flexible. What we came back with is a concept that we would like around 200 spaces. We don't need all 200 right now because, as I told you earlier in the slides, we're using around 100 on average. So we came up with a concept that we'd like to dedicate about 120 for RT and then have an option where we could have 80 being leased to the developer. And then if we have 60 days notice, we could inform the developer that we need those spaces if demand increases, so we could actually take those back. This would allow us to gain the most amount of revenue by doing some kind of arrangement like this. The price was appraised above the value, and since the buyer is willing to work with us on the spaces, I think we're now at a point where we'd like to seek input from the board. So we have, we have a couple of options here. And to Director Natoli's, I'll probably want to add on to that first option, or that if the board does move forward, we would actually bring something back with the staff report. but basically, yes. So again, we have the option of reaffirming the delegation of authority for the site, or we can revoke the authority. Like I said, at this point, we'd recommend that we move forward with delegation of authority to the GM with a report back to the board on our final conclusion.
All right, great. So I do have a request to speak on this item. Any questions, comments from directors before we get to that? Director Natoli?
Yeah, just very quickly. So on the site, there's a driveway out to Cucamonga Drive right now. So but the property doesn't connect, so you don't have frontage. So you only have the one access and egress to power in.
Yes.
So what's that sliver of property? Who's that belong to?
Thank you. Same question.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
If you can bring the map up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because that driveway is used right now, I believe. That's not the other, maybe the other picture.
Let me see if I can get this working. Is this the Cucamonga area? Is this? I don't know if it's working on that. Right there. That's right there, right?
Yes.
And you're referring to this sliver, right? Then it says City of Sacramento.
Yeah, the property line is that. Yeah, right there. That's.
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
I was going to say that thing is much more vivid.
Granite Regional owns it?
Granite Regional.
What do you do with that?
So has somebody spoken with them about having some access out? That sliver, it really narrows right up there at the curve. If I was going to redevelop the property, it would seem you could get a driveway access working with Granite Regional.
That would probably help.
And that's the city? Or
Yes.
it's Granite Park or Granite Regional Park? It's part of the city's property? It is? Okay. All right. I was just thinking you could figure that, so you could actually get second access to the property.
Does anybody know any City of Sacramento people? But no, that's it.
Yeah.
Director Budge?
No, I had the same question, but also, it would seem if you're going to build student housing there, that from a fire department standpoint, you need 2 points of access, especially on a road like Power Inn, which is a traffic jam 24/7.
Right. Yep.
My understanding is that the Granite Regional Park area is owned by, that property adjacent there is owned by Saparovich Damich.
Oh, okay.
Well, maybe they could donate it. It would make a nice tax deduction.
All right, so let me get the speaker up here, and then we can talk about maybe trying to refine that just a little bit. But so Jeffrey Tartagia. Jeffrey? Oh, well. All right, you get that over there enough there?
We'll see if this works. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, no, you're good.
All right, well, actually, it was going to be on item 10 because you have gone for the number one, should we say, busiest, should we say, light rail station, which is I-80. Now you've gone for the second one, which is 65th Street. And this third location through here that used to be a, should we say, problem, now the rugby teams have been using it and the soccer practice fields have been using it. So it's going to be real interesting. You guys look back and see how much in one night you have changed RT's property and destructions. So should we say 20 years or 5 years from now, you'll look back and see about these decisions. And gentlemen, I hope you reflect well on it.
Yep, we're confident. So, so that concludes the request to speak on this item. So, do we want to try and, during the process of, potentially general manager negotiations, try and work on some sort of acquisition to make the ingress egress out of there a lot more palatable? It might actually help the value of the property and things like that. So.
We'll work on that.
Okay.
He's a friend of light rail, I know that.
Yeah.
Mr. Domich.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, we'll see.
I mean, he's the only chair the Friends of Light Rail have ever had. So.
Okay, so bringing back just those two options there, then Brent, just so we look.
Chair, I'll move recommendation A.
Okay.
With the Atoli amendment.
Okay, so that
And hopefully direction to staff to try to acquire that sliver.
Right. So so that was moved by Director Harris, seconded by Director Jennings. So any other comments, questions of the board or from the board? So with that, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Nice work, everybody.
Motion passes at 100 votes. And so we also have the deal of trying to acquire the sliver of property for
Right. That was
egress.
that direction was made loud and clear by a number of folks. So with that, next item, please.
Item number 14, Sacramento Placerville Joint Powers Authority meeting. Director Budge has provided a written report if she has anything further to add.
Any further elaboration there?
Nope, not unless Mr. Natoli has something to say.
You got it all.
Okay. Very
No
good.
amendment.
Okay. With that, I believe we are adjourned.
Yeah.